Nick Hodder, a presentation from him. Nick Hodder is Director of Digital Transformation. After the presentation's aired, we will be joined by Nick for some Q&A as well. I know we are running about 10 minutes over schedule here, so we'll be joined by Nick shortly after the presentation. Nick's, as mentioned, Director of Digital Transformation from Imperial War Museums. He's a former Googler with over 20 years experience in tech. And we've heard from a number of charities over the last 2 days, and Nick's passion does lie in kind of technology disruption with the charity sector, of which we'll discuss in a little bit more detail after his presentation is aired. But for the final presentation of the day, I'm now going to play that, and then we'll welcome Nick in afterwards. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Nick Hodder. I'm the Assistant Director of Digital Transformation at Imperial War Museums. Rather than sharing our digital transformation success stories at IWM, of which there are of course loads, this is going to be a little more philosophical. At IWM, our mission is to inform the public about conflict. Whilst we have physical assets, digital assets, and impressive objects that you can see, touch, and watch in action, the most powerful tool at our disposal is the knowledge that we hold and the creativity with which we tell human stories about conflict. I would argue that rather than being about technology, increasing income, or reducing cost, that for any organisation, commercial, public sector, or non-profit, digital transformation is about people, about understanding people, understanding your customers and building great experiences for them, and understanding your own staff or volunteers to make working a great experience for them and to get them excited about what you do for your customers. Now, I was going to call this presentation my digital transformation road trip analogy, and why that analogy doesn't work and why that's okay, because it's okay to fail. And then I didn't, because I'm not good at titles. Now, I don't meet anyone who has successfully transformed an organisation, and if they claim that they have, I assume that they would probably be lying, or there's some sort of misunderstanding about what we're talking about. Why has nobody successfully transformed an organisation? Because we're all at the beginning of a very long journey, and if you think you're at the end of it, or even at the beginning of the end of it, then you've put the wrong destination in your sat-nav. Now, that's probably the wrong analogy, because we don't have a sat-nav, we don't even have a car. We're at the point where we're the first explorers out there attempting to sketch a map, and the first few hundred versions of that map are probably horribly wrong. The analogy falls apart even further when we talk about the fact that our industries and audiences are so unique in their own ways that we're all trying to explore a different map in a slightly different place. So we're not in a buddy movie. You're on your own. You don't have a car, you don't have a map. There are probably tigers or bears out there, or like a squirrel or something. So what have we learned? Nick's bad analogies, and we're going to die alone in the woods. I've made this sound like digital transformation is ambiguous and hard to define, and in many cases the outcomes of digital transformation will be just that, which is why I don't think we should start with outcomes. That may sound strange. Many of the digital transformation success stories I hear about, they're about successfully increasing income or reducing cost. But is that digital transformation? Those sound like good, effective technology projects succeeding in producing a well-defined outcome. But did it transform an organisation, or allow that organisation to better align itself in the current landscape? I suspect not. Digital transformation was born out of disruption. New startups, often entering markets to disrupt them, are using technology, and fearful of being outflanked by those new competitors, companies often try to implement the same technologies without realising that technology isn't at the heart of that disruption. The customer is. This comes down to how we're defining digital transformation. For me, it really is about understanding technology in the context of the internet and its effects on a rapidly changing society. That's produced a constant and rapidly shifting environment where people discover, engage, interact and transact in ways that are hard to keep up with in traditional corporate planning cycles. There are organisations that have created new business models that are made to deal with this environment. These are startups and more established organisations, largely but not exclusively in the tech sector. We call them disruptors, but to me they're better described as adapters. They may be disrupting your business model, but they aren't disrupting customers, they're enabling them. They are customer focused and importantly they're focused on the why. Google wants to organise the world's information and make it accessible to everyone. Uber want to bring transportation to everyone, everywhere. And Amazon want to help people find, discover and buy anything. Whatever we think of some of their choices or the wealth that they've accumulated, we can say something about all of those statements. Technology doesn't appear in their mission, but people do. Their missions imagine an ideal customer experience. They then create an operating model designed to achieve that through creating customer-focused culture and leveraging data and analytics to maintain and constantly evolve that understanding of their customer, and putting their teams to work to solve those problems that they find. They create a culture within clear parameters set by the mission that allows teams to experiment, fail, and learn about what doesn't work and what does. Technology simply facilitates that. They've arrived into the landscape pre-transformed, oven-ready, possibly not the right phrase right now, but the point is they are technology companies that have missions that make no mention of technology. The ambiguity that many organisations fear that motivates them to prescribe income or cost savings as outputs of digital transformation is the same ambiguity that these disruptors embrace. They build their whole organisations around it. Digital transformation is consultative and organisation-wide. It's owned by everyone, not just the department. As the fantastic Simon Sinek says, start with why. If you're a B2C, you're helping people. If you're a B2B, you're helping people help people. I don't know, maybe your business sells stuff to robots, maybe you're a B2R. If so, good luck with that, but for most of us, our organisations will work better if we better understand our customers and the people that are helping us to help our customers. We have to build our culture and our processes around adapting to their needs. Technology is the final piece of the puzzle. We have to choose technology that adapts to our customers and technology that enables our teams to adapt. By doing that, we're creating great experiences and trust. In my view, that will give you an increased income and cost savings, but more importantly, a long-term sustainable business. At IWM, we create experiences for people that inform and create discussion around conflict. We're building an organisation and a culture that will and is enabling that, but we're not finished, and we never will be. We're sketching our own map, we're changing as we go along, we're making wrong turns along the way, but when we do, we learn from it and we move on. It's not a road movie. We've seen Thelma and Louise, we know how that ends. If I were to pick a film, it would be The Never-Ending Story. That's a film about imagination and what happens when you stop using it. And that is probably the best analogy I could have chosen for digital transformation. That's it from me. Good luck with your organisation, good luck with your digital transformation. Feel free to reach out to me if you've got any questions at all. I've been Nick Hodder. Goodbye.
and that was Nick Hodder, Director of Digital Transformation from Imperial War Museums. A great presentation to finish the day, and clearly quite a bit of time spent on the production of that. So big thank you to Nick there. Hopefully we're going to be joined by Nick for a Q&A session. Again, I can start. Here we go. Nick, welcome.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. And how about you?
Yeah, great, thanks. I think I may have been psychologically affected by lockdown, and that may have that may have presented itself in the video in some way. Yeah.
No, I think that was a brilliant presentation, and well put together, I must say. So thanks for spending the time doing so. And as I said, it's a real nice way to kind of finish the event itself today, and then hopefully we can just dive deeper into a few kind of pertinent points that have been raised over the last 2 days, and kind of pick your brain a little bit with that. So with that, we heard back in June and the start of yesterday from Sedef Gavaz, who's the interim Chief Digital and Product Officer over at Natural History Museum, and she very much covered kind of their product pivot in response to COVID. So when the museum doors were shut, kind of how they had to think quickly and kind of realign. Did you do anything similar at Imperial War Museums, and how quickly kind of was that rolled out, if so?
I think so. I think the first thing to say is that I was really impressed by my team's response to COVID-19 and the collaboration around the organisation in response.
Yeah.
I think it was a challenging time. Interestingly for me, I joined IWM during lockdown, so I joined on the 1st of May.
Yeah.
So I interviewed for the role in January. So the job was very different when I arrived. But I was keeping, as soon as lockdown happened, I was keeping in touch with the team and sort of plugged into the plans and things. I think that, sort of pointing to the video, really, the critical thing is that IWM do, particularly across kind of the web and social channels, focus on story. And I think I feel we did well is by drawing on parallels from our archive and relating that back to COVID. So we obviously had empty shelves in supermarkets, and so we had loads to draw on in terms of rationing and going into war. Obviously there's depending on whether you're Donald Trump or not, the 1917 or 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, which is significant in terms of its effect on the war, and potentially because there's a very good chance that arrived in Europe on a ship bringing troops over from the US. There's very interesting aspects of that to draw upon in today's world as well. So I think, we had lots to talk about and we had lots of stories to tell. I think that stood us in good stead.
Nice. And then just interestingly, because you kind of joined during the pandemic, and we've had quite a lot of conversation as well about onboarding over the last few days, and certainly in events prior to this. What was that process like, and how did it work for you? Did you feel like it went well, and was the digital tools used within that? I guess there were.
So IWM are very much a Microsoft house, so the tool of choice was Microsoft Teams. I think, and from the discussions I've heard, I think what was great was a lot of people embraced things like Teams and Zoom really quickly and adapted really quickly. I think I do hear people saying things like, that's we're digitally transforming because we're using Teams or Zoom. And I think that's almost like the point of the video of the presentation, really, was I think Teams and Zoom are great. And I think it's a really good positive sign for digital transformation that big teams can embrace technology in that way. I think it's really important to indicate that is not in itself digital transformation. And the teams adopting technology is great. For me, it's all about the customer and how we adapt to the customer, how we leverage technology to adapt to the customer. So Teams was great. My introduction into the IWM was actually really good as a result of Teams. I feel like, as a personal experiment for me, we're talking about 500 odd people who I've never met in my life. And my only interaction with them has been on Teams, but we've developed really good relationships over the past few months. And so you can do that remotely, you can do that digitally, and it increases the confidence in organizations to say, actually, we can have a really big remote workforce. So I think it's really good and really positive in that respect. But yeah, I think we've got to wait. I don't think we can call that digital transformation.
Of course, yeah. And then a few questions coming in from the audience. We've got Joe Hobbs come in with, how do you recognise when a transformation is failing? What are the indicators? So obviously, it's probably, you could talk a while for that. What are the kind of the key indicators there?
Yeah, okay. So this goes to the heart of the kind of philosophical point I was making. If you define your digital transformation in terms of income, in terms of cost saving, in terms of achieving a specific kind of business outcome, I don't think it's really digital transformation. And I'm not saying it would be a bad project. I'm saying, to me, that feels like IT. Hopefully really good IT. So one example is if you're using things like enterprise architecture, which is a methodology adopted by a lot of IT departments internally now. And it looks at the wider business and the wider business needs, which is an improvement on how things used to work, but it's still focused on business needs. So I'm more attracted to, in terms of IT operations, I think moving to a DevOps approach where it's agile, where you are improving your product each month or your products each month. I think that's really important. In terms of how you define projects, I'm more inclined to suggest things like service design. So we call it digital transformation, but really, as I pointed out, I think it's organizational transformation. I think you're changing your whole organization. And so if you're leading digital transformation, I don't think that you own these projects. I think you are you're consultative and you collaborate with the rest of the organization to enable the change. So it's a very long-winded way of answering the question, right? It is really hard to define digital transformation. So I would say, well, how isn't digital transformation failing? Because we've seen, as I pointed out earlier, I think almost all digital transformation sort of fails. Really good digital transformation is a small, controlled failure. And I would point out Google in this respect. Google defined the mission. It's about organizing that information and making that accessible to everyone. The way they do that, so my product at Google was Maps. The way we did that with Maps is we would have lots and lots of teams, tens, potentially hundreds of teams working on small projects. So program manager, 3, 4, 5 developers working on small projects across Maps. Most of them would fail. Google knew that. What they wanted is to identify the 2 or 3 things that would work and understand how to scale them. So for me, that's what digital transformation success looks like. It's enabling your organization to work in that way. You won't look like Google probably, but enabling that kind of small, fast failure enables you to find the success stories, but you need to be really customer focused. So that's why I'm really keen to, I think you should create blueprints through things like service design, understanding what you want to do for your customer and understanding what the service might look like. And then you bring in technology to enable that. I hope that answered that question. I'm not sure if it did, but yeah.
No, I think that's good. And like you say, it's very difficult to kind of define digital transformation. It's when we run this event in years past, it's the opening question I always ask our panelists, kind of as part of the panel session. What is your definition of digital transformation, and what does it mean to you? Because for individuals working in and around any kind of digital business technology transformation, it means very different things. Obviously, you're saying about the customer focus, and then to others, it's a lot about internal transformation, which you kind of define as that organisational transformation. So I think that was a really interesting answer and good to hear. We've got another one in, Caroline Coles. How do you restore the faith and trust of the staff involved in the transformation when it fails?
It's a really good point, and I've experienced that, and I think most people who've done some digital transformation will recognise that. And I think that's also symptomatic of going out there with big projects. So I don't know. A lot of the timescales for the big projects are kind of 12 months, 18 months potentially, or maybe they were intended to be 9, but they end up being longer. So a classic example of disruption is COVID-19, right? Yeah. Now we expect disruption to come from competition, but actually this time disruption came from something else. Our branches at IWM were closed for 6 months. I mean, it's absolutely devastating. It's the absolute worst case scenario. Yeah. Had there been a tornado or some sort of natural disaster, it wouldn't have been this bad, right? I mean, it's very, very bad. If you had a sort of fixed term digital transformation project that lasted 9 or 12 months, there's every chance you might not be able to proceed with it for any number of different reasons. And that's just the current example. What I'm saying is the reality is constantly shifting. The landscape is constantly shifting. Yeah. As internet services and people find new ways of using the web advance, that acceleration becomes quicker and quicker and quicker. But we're using traditional corporate planning cycles. And more of these fixed specification projects are failing because the landscape's moving too quickly. So how do we fix that? Because you've lost trust and faith in the organization. Well, as I said, I think it's consultative, it's collaborative. You don't own it. It shouldn't be a department that you own. It's you working with the rest of the organization to help them adapt to that constantly shifting reality. It's about understanding your mission and about understanding the culture that you need to create, like that fast failing culture I talked about at Google, and so the culture you need to create, which involves everyone, and then applying technology to that. It's like the last thing you go to, not the first thing you go to. But in addressing culture first, what you're doing is you're reaching out to the rest of the organization and you're getting their feedback, you're working with them, you're understanding their problems, and they're helping you to understand the customer and the customer's problems. So I don't think I've been involved in any number of digital transformation projects that have not involved a wide enough group of stakeholders and reached out to enough people. Who is it? I think it's David Marquette that says decisions should be made where the information is. And the people with the information are often the people closest to the coalface, on the shop floor with the customers. I don't think we have been doing a good enough job of reaching out to those people and understanding their problems and actually understanding the conversations they have with customers.
Yeah, that's a really good answer, Nick, and well in depth. So thanks for that. So that's all we've got time for. I assume the Imperial War Museums, the doors now open.
The doors are wide open. We have big sites with like good controls in terms of being COVID safe. I would highly recommend you visit IWM in London, IWM Duxford, Churchill War Rooms, or IWM North. All that footage you saw was from IWM North, by the way, in Manchester. Feel free to go visit. North and London are free, completely free.
Yeah, well, I was in the north last year. Got family local to Manchester, so spent some good time in there. Absolutely loved it. It's an iconic building as well, so real great museum. So do encourage anyone to visit the museums in London and in North. So Nick, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for a brilliant presentation and kind of for your honesty in that presentation as well, and within your answers. It was a nice perspective and a perspective we hadn't heard too much of as well over the last 2 days. So Nick, thanks so much for joining. Real pleasure to have you with us. Thanks for taking the time to do so.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Cheers, Nick. So a lovely way to end the event today with Nick Hodder there, Director of Digital Transformation from IWM, Imperial War Museums. So real pleasure to be joined by him and to hear his side of the story. Do connect with him on LinkedIn if you've got kind of any follow-up or any questions with regards to that presentation as well. We are back in October. We go live again on October 7 and 8 for our, it's more of a European show, so we got European companies as well as UK companies, so do register for that. And we're also live at the back end of October for our North American conference, so that'll be on a EST time zone, but welcoming more kind of North American US companies to the fold for that conference. But it's all very interesting. It doesn't matter, obviously, we're finding a lot